Funding for this program was provided by
Up here in northern Michigan, we are surrounded by water. I don't think you can go a mile in any direction without running into some kind of water. And water was very important to our native people. So when it came to forming a dance troupe, that name was looked at. What do we want to depict? And that's okay. Water Wonderland. So Manda was the name that we came up with.
My name is Joanne Carey, and I'm holding a picture of my mother, Maggie Carey, and me. This was taken back in the late 50s.
Abushu, Sagaman Dishnakas, and the Mado Dam. My name is David Shinanaquit. I belong to the Little Traverse Bay Band of Wadawa Indians.
Apengishmak and Dishnakas, Makwa, Mangdodamak. Waganak Sildawa Jamaganesh, United States Marine Corps, and Dow. Battle Creek, Michigan, and Donjaba. Originally from Petoskey, Michigan.
Mesko Mahing Indishnikas, Walkanaxing Wadawa Shmaganish, Kabelas, and Petoskey, and Donjaba. My English name is Joe Mitchell. I was born and raised in Petoskey. It's home.
Honey, my name is Dennis Dominic. I am one of 6 children of Robert and Juanita Dominic, the founders of the Manda Indian Dance Troupe.
My name is David Dominic. I was born here in Petoskey, Michigan.
Ani Harchikilgamundishkov, Makwadom, Waganetsuno Dawa. My name is Archie Kilgama Jr., and my totem is Bear Clan.
My name is Marvin Mulholland. I'm the son of Grace Paul Mulholland. My mother is a full-blooded Chippewa and Ottawa Indian.
I'm Darlene Kegamon Mulholland. I'm the daughter of Archie and Dorothy Kegamon from Petoskey.
I'm Jane Martell. Nadol Jaganashi Nosewin, Badasaka, and Daya.
I'm Jerry Lismer. I've spent my life doing things that come in part from my background, being familiar with the Manda and the tribe. I think that's an important part of who I am.
Ani Tabashash Kwan Indishnikas, Requedoing and Jabame, Didaska and Dama, Imkia Dodam. My English name is Arlene Naganash.
My name is R.J. Smith. I work for Youth Services, the Waniganzajuk Youth Services Department for the Little Traverse Bay Band of Odawa.
as a dancer, and of course my favorite dance was the war dance. Not because I was a violent person, but because I was young and energetic, and the war dance involves fast and a lot of movement. So I was involved as a dancer.
And I was involved because our mother was the manager of the dancers. My favorite dance was the rabbit dance.
I became involved with the dance troupe because our parents wanted us to be, and we, as a family, were involved. And we learned the songs and the drumming and the dancing that went along with being in the dance troupe.
And our parents were very involved in the Northern Michigan Ottawa Association, both of them. Mm-hmm. So I think that just led to our involvement with the dance troupe too, since our mother was involved. And I think he got involved because he liked me.
I was involved in the Manda Beakies. My whole family was involved with the Manda Beakies. My mom and my 3 sisters were all involved. It felt good. It was a good way that the people, and when I first went to school, we had the dance troupe went to my school and we danced. We danced for the kids. So right away when I started school, they knew I was a Anishinaabe.
They said if you were interested, come on over and watch a dance practice. So I went and saw it. I liked what I saw, and I tried it, and I joined them. That's a long time ago.
Well, I used to go home during the summers to Petoskey, and I'd work at the old Holiday House restaurant. My Aunt Margaret worked there, and she got me to dance, and that's how I got involved in it.
Robert Dominic came down to our house and was talking to my grandmother about doing this dance group. And she said, "Oh, I think this will be a good idea." She says, "I think the kids need to know something about the dance, about dancing."
Well, Mandy Beakey's dance troupe started through my father, Robert Dominic, and he was president of the Northern Michigan Ottawa Association, which was a group of Native Americans here in Michigan who filed land claims against the federal government for the land that was taken from the Odawa people. There was a lot of things done through the treaties that were just wrong, and my father filed federal land suits against the feds on it. But as far as dancing and the singing of songs and stuff, it was pretty much gone. And this was something that my father wanted to bring back to Northern Michigan, and it was probably due to this that this is stuck with me all these years. You know, here it is. You know, some 60 years later, and I still love dancing. And as long as my body keeps holding up like it is, you know, I'm gonna continue to do that as well.
It's hard for our youth to find the value in their culture today, and why it's important to hold on to them. It's even historically, it supplied a sense of identity. It supplied a sense of togetherness. It was a way for our people to just be together and express who they were and not be afraid of that. A long time ago, when the Manda Beaky started, they were coming out of an era where they weren't allowed to express themselves as Native people. It was even illegal, for a lot of it, and for them to be able to come out and present their culture, was their responsibility, because I knew that there was something that they had to pass on to their youth. And so now we have our youth today that I'm lucky enough to work for them and to try and be a part of them remembering these dances. that their great-grandmothers, that their great-grandfathers, their aunties and uncles, they performed these a long time ago, and it was always a part of our culture.
It does help your self-esteem. I think that's to me, that's the major reason. It gives you pride in yourself, and you know that you are something and you are special. And a lot of our Native youth, including myself, you feel better about yourself when you're doing something like this, and you know it's part of you, it's part of your heritage.
But it's the same struggle as when Manda Biki started. It's just finding youth to pick up that responsibility and to take it on, and to not be afraid of it. And there's a lot of influences that our kids have today. A lot of outside influences that can pull them away from their culture, pull them away from their families, and so, having these strong identifiers of who they are is really good for them and who they are as people.
I grew up in a time where being an Indian was to be ashamed. So I didn't have that. I didn't try to be white. I was Indian. And I didn't try to pass myself off as anything other than an Indian.
There again, the pride.
The pride, yeah. And the camaraderie is...
And wanting to learn. And we were losing.
Yeah, a lot of
dancing.
people thought of Indians at that time as drunken Indians, or old drunken Indians, but none of us drank. None of us, and at the time drugs weren't that prevalent. It was mostly alcohol, but I don't remember anybody drinking.
Not in the dance troupe.
No, I mean, if you drank in the dance troupe, you were out. There was no, just boom, you're out if you ever. But nobody ever did. We just did fun things, we danced, or we'd go, like I said, play baseball, or just do fun things that kids do.
Whereas this keeping us together, we still have maintained our roots and our tribal citizens. When we was growing up, there was no work in this area, so if everyone to raise their family or have enough money to raise their family, they had to move away. But as long as we're maintaining our culture here, those that had to move away know where their roots are, and at some point, if they wish to, they can come back.
And then coming back to the place of my ancestors, and not really knowing much about being Odawa. By having danced and being around others my age, I learned what it was to be Anishinaabe. I learned the pride of being Anishinaabe. I loved dancing. I enjoyed it. I still do occasionally, and I think it's important that we carry it on and do as much as we can for that next generation and those next 7 generations.
It made me proud to be an Indian, especially during that time. It was, people were they were prejudiced. They didn't understand us. They needed to be more educated about us. So it was a hard time fitting in as an Indian. But I think this helped people understand us better.
Well, before before I got into it, I was just more or less existing. But to be with the group and doing what they're doing, just being involved with them and helped me get an identity. I was a Manda Biki dancer. I still am a Manda Biki dancer. I'll always be a Manda Biki dancer.
It got me out in front of the public and being there with my family, being there with friends, and actually learning my culture and doing this. It gave me a lot of confidence, and and I don't know, it just helps out in many ways like that.
Participating in Manda Dance Troupe as a young person has stuck with me my whole life. In the beginning, I was reluctant on getting out there in front of people and doing something different. I wanted to fit in too. I wanted to fit in the area up here in northern Michigan. There was always something different that I knew I was different. So being part of Manda Beakies, it really changed my life. I learned something that was special, and I did become pretty good at it. I was able to go off and dance in every state except Alaska, and I did that by joining a musical show when I was young. In the musical show, I had my own dance number, and this show started touring back in 1966. It was called Up With People, and they're still touring, today throughout the world. So I was very lucky to have joined that group and to be able to go out and dance. And I quickly learned that people wanted to see that. Wherever I went, after the shows, we would talk to people and stuff. They'd always come up and talk to me and ask me about my native culture. They'd ask me about my dancing, where I learned. Not only non-native people, but also native people would also come up and talk to me about it, because there's a lot of areas in the U.S. that where they had lost some of that culture as well. So I was able to do that, and I was able to also help in different areas as we traveled. I would help with dancing with other people as well. So it was a learning experience. It was something that I'm very proud of, and I'm glad that it really happened.
Dominics, they were the head of the dance troupe. I kind of looked up to those guys to learn my different styles of dancing because they had been involved so long. I was only involved from probably 1960 to 1963. They were the main force behind that dance troupe then.
Millie and Monty, they were all involved in it.
With the next group of kids that came up, they would just keep it going.
They provided us with a lot of initiative, as to keep on dancing. They encouraged us. They helped us with things we needed help with. So that's how they were involved. And of course, the dancers.
Part of the growth was the fact that the willingness by the dancers to continue dancing, I think, had a lot to do with the continuing the growth and the interest. If there wouldn't have been any interest, there would have been no Manda Beaky,
The way the Manda Beakies grew, mostly word of mouth, and it ended up being a lot of families.
There was probably about 8 different main families that were involved in the group.
Some of the names of the families were Smiths, Shenandoahs, Showmans, the Careys, Kyogamas, Mitchells, Ottos, Mulhollands, the Verneys, Steads, Naganashes, Gascos, Chingwas, Vandergriff. When we would go places, we would do powwows and do festivals, and we'd travel around, and everybody was having a good time doing it, and the regalia nights, and making regalia, and going through our dances, and having my father instruct what the dances meant, and the meaning of everything, and it was a learning process, and everybody really enjoyed it.
Did Marie ever drum? Did Marie drum with Millie?
No, just Millie.
Just Millie.
Because there were no men there.
And no men would do it.
So that's why Millie did it.
And we got a lot of flack for that too, for women drummers, which nowadays it's okay, but at that time
the men were
they
drumming.
didn't like women drumming.
Now those drums are full. Back then, though, we couldn't get anyone to drum
for us or sing.
That's why we had Millie.
We had one, my Uncle Si drummed with Millie. but he was the only one.
Well, just like the males, I don't think we had many males compared to females.
Right.
We had a lot of female
Marvin,
dancers.
Jerry, and Paul. There was some.
It's hard to recruit the males.
Yeah.
But back then,
Well, back then, a lot of the males were just trying to exist, they were working. You know, there was very, very few jobs available, so they had to go out and take whatever job was available at the time. They didn't have a 40-hour week where they could schedule time to drum. You know, they had to provide for their family, so they had to work.
The Manda Beaky Dance Troupe was made up of a lot of people in ages from 8, 9, 10 years old right on up to the early 20s, and it was a real challenge to keep the group together and to make sure that it was successful.
because we had to sign a contract that stated not to go into bars with your regalia on and not to talk about our culture under the influence, and
Absolutely no alcohol.
And then there was always the annual dance in Cross Village that everyone attended, and if you see somebody that's dancing there, then you could invite them. So perhaps they'd be interested in joining the Manda Beakies.
there were no guidelines. If you wanted to learn your culture and you wanted to participate, you were able to. Unless you were drinking.
Yeah, drinking.
Or raising heck.
My father was the main drummer and singer and the storyteller and the master of ceremonies. But we also had our director was Dorothy Kilgama.
Dorothy was very strong in more or less directing us on how to dance, how the dances went.
My parents and them formed the Northern Michigan Ottawa Association. And Bob was an educated man. He worked for Penn Dixie. He graduated from Central Michigan University.
My father was the first Native American in the state of Michigan to get a 4-year college degree back in the 1930s, and my mother was the first Native American woman to get a college degree as well.
Once or twice a week, we'd go down there and practice back at their house. Yeah, it kind of started small, and got bigger towards the end. Just the different families being interested and wanting to get involved. Started out with a couple families, and there was more families that got involved as time went on. Got more recognition, and people wanted to join us.
We felt we could make some kind of an impact on the public and on some of our people too, to get them involved in what we were doing. It did help. It helped. But also there's one other person that was really involved with us that I need to mention too, is Louise Lismer. She was a media person. She was with us like at every place we danced. She covering it, putting it in a newspaper, letting the public see us.
You look at, again, some of the tribal things. This was the Petoskey News Review, and my mother was, I mentioned, adopted by the Ottawa and Chippewa tribes. She was the first white woman adopted by the tribes, and there's Bob Dominic, who was the chief at the time, tied to the same things that the tribe is about justice, about peace, about how do we make the world the best place it can be for as many people as possible. And my mother, who was a strong believer in justice, was, just extremely good friends with Bob and Juanita Dominic. Bob was the chief of the Ottawa and Chippewa tribes at the time. The friendship involved her in a lot of activities. She was a writer for the Petoskey News Review at the time, and later with the Detroit News. Enjoy being a part of it and seeing and absorbing Manda Beaky dances and different tribal functions. So much of what we learn from what we feel and what we experience and the emotions it brings out, not from what we read. Dance and music are essential, and their dance and music were essential to beating it into me. And something about that drum and, and the chants that just made you feel the history and made you feel a part of things and connected. Her values were passed on to me. Her writing was intended to pass that along, to pass along some of the beauty of the tribe and the wisdom and the understanding and the caring that so often you can live next door to somebody and not understand all of those things, and so her intent was to try to help people see, and she did that through the Petoskey News Review, through the Detroit News, she was the first director of the Michigan Women's Press Club, and so she connected with a lot of other people in journalism and through the media to also spread the word. So briefly, that's how her writing is tied to Native American issues. A lot of critically important things in the 50s and 60s.
It was hard though, because I still look back at, back in the 50s and 60s, growing up, how people looked at me as different.
The racism was really strong. We knew our place. And if you didn't know your place, they were sure to tell you your place. And racism today, it's still alive. Some of it's more subtle. It hasn't changed a bit.
Growing up in Petoskey, it was kind of tough. I mean, it was a pretty prejudiced town, I thought, back in the day. And on up and through high school, especially when the fishing rights issue came up, there were people coming by our house throwing stones at us in our house. My family was really involved in the activist movement, the American Indian movement. My sister Julie was actually at Wounded Knee. And my mother and a couple of my cousins actually went to Washington, D.C. and took over the Bureau of Indian Affairs building.
So it was hard to walk around and be obviously Indian. Like, people now they wear the beadwork and all of those things, and you didn't do those things. You tried to blend in and not stand out. I remember walking down the street in the 50s, and I heard this non-Indian family. They were some small children and a parent, and they were saying, we were walking down the street, and they said, Indian. And the mother said, shh. And they walked across the street. They moved to the other side of the street. And there were some stores that I went to that they would come to the door and say, you're not welcome here. So it was things like that,
We were treated, as I can remember as a child, because I know what to say now as far as the treatment. We were treated like second-class citizens. I know as I got older, I heard about jobs that were only given to Indians, and they were poor pay scale. I guess in a lot of ways they still treated us like we were savages, even though we weren't. And then when I went back in the 60s, when I came home and danced with the Manda, I think I danced there with 1962 and 1963. It was there. The prejudice was there. And at times it was blatant. And other times it was just under the surface, as it is today. And this is the 21st century, many years later. I can go home and I can still feel it. So it's still there. Even though our children are much better educated, much better traveled, the prejudice is still there. And I guess in an Indian community, because we know more about them than they actually know about us, I think it'll always be there. And besides that, according to them, they're the victors. And the way of the world always goes to the victor, even though they never defeated me.
It wasn't too cool. There was a lot of bigotry. They had almost all of us typecast as drunken Indians, no good Indians. And the one that affected me most was the stinking Indians. That even bothers me to this day. The drunken Indian thing, I got into that too. I figured if they were going to call us drunken Indians, might as well be one. And I was for 20, 25 years. I felt my involvement with the Mandabikis is something that kept me going. In my heart, I was a dancer.
It was different. You knew that you were different. I started out with the Mandabikis at age 5 or 6. I was just in school, and my parents always taught us to speak out, and during during that time in the 50s and 60s, there was a lot of prejudice that I felt, and a lot of my native friends felt too.
You know, we are one people. We are not only one with ourselves and with people, but we're one with nature and the world. And there's a lot of people that just do not see that. They don't live it that way. But in my heart, that's the way that I want to live.
It was different in the 50s and 60s. People didn't understand Anishinaabe like they do now.
A lot of prejudice. I thought it was right nowadays. I think it's still there, but it's veiled. But it's just like RJ said just the other day. He said he was in Home Depot and they were following him around. He said, "What am I going to steal? A piece of lumber?" I mean, they were following him around. That's the type of thing that happened at that time.
I had a lot of white friends, and I would go over to the house and play basketball in their backyards and play at their homes. And then after I grew up and moved away from Petoskey and looked back, I realized that I have no idea what the insides of their homes were like. I was allowed to play in the backyards, but I was never allowed into the homes of the white friends. There was prejudice even in the parochial system that I went into. I overheard a nun telling another nun, that it's their job to put the fear of God into the pagans, and that was us, she was referring to the Native Americans,
And in the schools in Holy Childhood, they weren't allowed to speak their native tongue. It was the devil's language. Yeah, they weren't allowed to speak.
I remember one girl telling me one time, I don't know where, I was at St. Francis, and she said, "You don't even look Indian, you look like you're Italian. Like I should be glad that I look like I'm Italian,
We had people that said they were French Canadian, or, that were ashamed to be native, but we never felt that way.
Well, we were taught to be proud. You teach your kids to be proud of who they are, where they came from.
You teach the kids, and as we were taught, the elders taught us, because our elders were hard workers. They did a lot of the manual labor, but even in high school, when I was in high school, the counselors would separate, had different programs for Indians. A counselor would take a male American Indian and tell him to take wood shop classes, machine shop classes, while the non-Indians would be encouraged to take college preparatory courses to prepare them for college. But they didn't help the Indians prepare for college.
Do I think that our young people are facing similar struggles? I would say yes, they do face similar struggles, but they have something to fall back on, and that is our culture and our history as a tribe, our elders who can advise them. It is much more structured and formal today. Being a sovereign nation, being able to do things as a tribe is much more formal. And because it's much more formal, our young people have more resources that they can call upon to assist them in certain areas, as well as they have an elders group and many elders that are willing to stand up and to help them with their struggles. So it is better, I think, for our young people today, but in reality, it's probably no different than it was back in the 50s and 60s. There's just a better way to cope with things today that we did not have back in those days.
But it's gotten better for our youth because now they're educated, they're have good jobs. I think once you start getting educated and I think you start taking care of issues, it gets better.
People just need to understand us better. And that's similar from when I was younger and there's young, similar then and today. Just need to understand us better through education and through the Manda and through other cultural community events that we have.
Look at that redskin over there. Get off the street, Redskin. This is our town. The white man has been here for over 500 years, and actually they don't know a thing about us. Maybe they're trying to learn something.
Manda, that means water wonderland, and the word comes from us as Native people, the Odawas in northern Michigan, and you know the Amanda Beakies were not just made up of this band of Ottawa Indians, but it was made up of the Grand Traverse Band as well as Little River Band. We didn't discriminate on who could be part of the Amanda Beakies, but it was basically northern Michigan.
It was just a name that my grandmother and Mr. Dominic had talked about. We talked with some other older people, and that's what they came up with. The old ones came up with that name.
My dad, I believe, chose the name. He grew up in Cross Village. Water meant a lot to him, and actually when he told me when he was growing up in Cross Village that if it wasn't for some commercial fishermen, a lot of the native people wouldn't have made it through the winters, because as kids they would run down to the docks in Cross Village, and the fishermen would throw them lake trout and that would get them. They would combine that with a few potatoes they had and whatever provisions they had, and they would make it through the winter, and that was about it. So the water itself, water wonderland, I think is just, the water has always meant a lot to him. As I was a kid growing up, my dad would want to go back to Cross Village, so during the summer and weekends we'd go back to Cross Village, and along the bluffs between Harbor Springs and Cross Village we would stop, and my dad would take the drum out as the sun was setting, and he would sing, and we'd all sit around and watch the sunset, and he'd be singing for a half hour as the sun would set, overlooking the water again. So I mean, I'm sure it meant a lot to him.
I think a lot of the significant things were that we were invited as a dance troupe, Native Americans. We were invited to go places. We were able to bring some of our traditional way of life to those people. I think that was a big deal, because not a lot of that was done at that time.
The one that I really remember is when we went to Detroit and John F. Kennedy was there. I just remember meeting him. And the group down in Detroit gave him a headdress. And then the day he died, we were over at an elementary school putting on a performance for the students over there. And then they came out and they told us that John Kennedy was dead. That he had been killed out in Texas. So we did a special ceremony for him at that school.
The peak moment for me was when we went to Cross Village and danced the Cross Village powwow. They weren't powwows back then like there are now. So every summer they'd have a powwow in Cross Village. So I remember that event. When I was 6 or 7 years old, I went down to stay with my sister in Chicago. And then just Cross Village pavement came up, and my mom and dad, they put me on the airplane and flew me from Chicago to Pelson. And then my family picked me up in Pelson and drove me up to Cross Village, and I danced that afternoon. And they made the announcement over the speaker that, yep, this job just flew in from Chicago for this powwow. That was kind of cool because I was only 6 or 7. They put me on the plane by myself, but I made the powwow. It was a big event.
The biggest event we ever went to was when our group was asked to go to Detroit. And I forget where it was we even danced under, but that was one of the highlights of my time with the Mandabiki dancers. The traveling, the closeness, the dancing there, and especially in Detroit, to me, being in a big city was being in a whole new world, another world. We danced many other places too. But that was one that stuck out the most to me.
I still remember all those dances, so it's good to see they're starting to come back now. I see them getting performed at different events nowadays, and it's pretty cool. And I'm glad that somebody kept those alive. So.
I don't really think I was all that good then. I think I was better when I was older. No, there wasn't any dance that I was specifically known for. No. Like I said, the one I enjoyed the most was Men's Fancy with Joe, when we'd get out there and do that. Other than that, no. I just enjoyed dancing. It was fun. And it still is today.
Considering when I started dancing in the group, I was only about 14 or 15. And I'm 73 years old now. So I've been dancing a long time. Well, like the ribbon dance, it was male and female. 3 men, 3 women, and we started them out there wrapping around, then we dance out, and so they'd spin out, then we braid it, then go around, they'd gather it, we'd braid it again. It was 3 men, 3 women. The special day dance was the fish dance. That was we used the young ladies, probably 8, 9 years old, something like that there. And they did their cute little dance out there, they was usually a crowd pleaser, watching those young ones. And we had some specialty dances with the boys too.
Was there a dance that I was really known for? And if I had to pick one, I guess it would be the gift dance. And I was known for that because it was a fun dance. It was not only fun for all of us natives to hoot and holler over, but it was a fun for the audience, and so it was always a good time. It wasn't something that I did at every performance, but whenever I did it, it was always a good hoot.
They used to like to watch the rabbit dance too, where it was a social dance. They used to like to watch that too. We used to involve the public with that too. Just let them get out there if they wanted to get in a circle. Just follow the group in front of you. Just watch the dancers in front of you. Now today they call that the rabbit dance. They call it two-step. To this day, they're still involving the audience.
Mine was a fish dance. I was the leader of the fish dance. And the fish dance was like an honor dance, and it imitated the fish. We imitated the fish. And we would go in a circle, and we'd imitate the fish by our arms. This is the fish's fins. And then there was a part where we would stoop down towards the floor and do our arms. And then we would stand up, and then we would continue around. And it was like we were told, this is to honor the fish and to thank him. We're imitating him, and he's fishing, or he's swimming around, or swimming. Then when we stoop down, we're like hiding. We're down on the bottom hiding, and then we get up, and we continue to go around, and then we bend and flap our hands behind us, imitating the fish's tail as he swims into the gill net. And then the men bring home the prize of all the fish, and the women clean it and have a big feast. And it was a dance of imitating the fish, honoring him, and thanking him for giving up his life
For food.
for us so we could survive. And that's what I remember about the fish dance. That's what I was told to help us to get in the mood, or
Yeah. That's the
story.
bonnet dance. I just liked it. I don't remember the significance, so.
It was like a funeral.
It was, yeah,
Like
honoring
honoring the chiefs
dead.
that had gone
Yeah.
before.
That's the kind of thing that they should probably do printouts of and hand out at powwows to help the non-Indians understand the dances that they're watching, you know, because that's very informative, you know, and if they do a dance like that, it'd be nice if they hand it
That
out.
would be
Put that
informative.
information on it.
Even to our community, because I don't know how many people understand what that fish dance was about. But I remember, because I was the leader of the
Yeah.
fish dance.
A lot of the dances were like that, for like thanking, Mother Earth for our food, or that type of thing,
Well, another dance was a ribbon dance, and us younger ones did that
Yeah.
because there were more boys, and I think it was like the 11-year-olds that did it, and we needed 3 girls and 3 boys. And the ribbon dance was a thank you dance to the Great Spirit because of the knowledge of weaving that we were given. So when we did the ribbon dance, we were thanking the Great Spirit for giving us that knowledge and that gift. And that's what I remember.
Yeah, I
about
think
the
all
ribbon
those
dance.
dances have some significance.
I always say education is a good thing. And, I think if we educate our neighbors, our whoever wants to learn, that will help them to understand us and help us to get along better as a nation of different people. The lesson that we learned is if you know where you came from, you know where you're going. So that's kind of the message that I kind of always relate to young people is be proud of who you are and don't be afraid to step out there in front of people and show them your Anishinaabe culture. So just be proud of who you are and do it with a good heart.
Funding for this program was provided by